Hello, this is going to be a Valorant agent tier list. It's going to be centered around 5.03. It's going to be mainly focused around high tier ranked player and some pro play. Yeah, I'm going to get right into the controllers, I think. So let's start off with Viper, Easy S. She's basically got one bad map, which is Haven, and the rest she's at least playable on. Maybe not as main smoker. Sometimes she'll go and fill like the Sentinel kind of role. Where she can lurk and be annoying and control space, and that's mainly her strength, right? Controlling space is what she's great at. I think she's overall really strong. The fragile also makes her strong. 30 decay when you go into any of her util is also strong. So she's just overall strong. We're going to move on to Astra. So I think Astra is a lot harder to play since her -1 star nerf. You need to really understand timings for her to be good. By themselves, in a vacuum, 1 star is very, very versatile because you can suck, you can stun, you can smoke, and you can fake smoke. You got 4 options on 1 star, but the problem is that the stars themselves, placing them, aren't versatile at all. So even though you can take them back, you have such a long cooldown that you need to be very, very mindful of like when you're vulnerable and when you're not, and how you should play when you're vulnerable, and then also what timings you're vulnerable on. You don't want to be vulnerable when you know they're about to come out, right? You want to be timing your stars for when they're going to be coming out. You don't want to be on cooldown with all stars when they're actually executing. And if they are, then you have to realize like I have to give up my position maybe on site and I have to get out. I have to find a way out, and then I have to play retake with my team when my stars are up. I'm going to go with Omen next, and he's also B tier. Actually, I'm going to put both Brim and Omen together here. I'm just going to do them together. So I kind of think them as like two sides of the same coin. Like similar to Astra, Brim is really good at attacking, so Astra's ult is really good at like getting onto site and things. Brim's kit in general is like good at getting onto sites. He has his stim for fast moves, like fast to get onto sites. He can also you can break walls faster from Sage and break barriers from like the doors coming down and things with the stim, which is a very, very minor thing, but definitely relevant in some situations. His smokes last the longest, so if you struggle to go out, if you get mollied off or something, then his smokes are still going to be up when the molly's over. His molly's good at post plant, so he's got like a lot of options. His ult's good at post plant. His ult can set up you get onto the site by like ulting somewhere very important, such as ulting lamps on bind when you want to execute A. And Omen's kind of like the other side of the coin, where he's very good at defense. Bar his ult is, his ult is pretty good at defense still. It's not that bad. I wouldn't say it's good, but it's not that bad. But on attack, he can relocate easy. He can sell fakes easy. But he's really strong on defense, where his smokes are, even though his smokes are hollow. So this doesn't really have like the obscuring effect. Omen's able to use his hollow smokes a bit better than Astra, because he has his TP, so he can get out of like bad situations easier. So that means he can kind of maybe push into his smoke and watch for someone to enter his smoke and play into him, and then he can get a kill, TP out, that sort of stuff. Obviously, it's a lot slower than like the likes of a Jet or a Chamber, but he is definitely able to do that, especially in ranked, in like high real ranked or just normal ranked. He's definitely able to do that. Maybe a bit tighter on pro play, a bit harder on pro play. And also, you probably wouldn't be making solo plays like that in pro anyway. And his paranoia is very good at controlling space when they actually come out. Like he's got his smokes and his paranoia to really help stop people coming onto site. We'll move on to the Duelist. Okay, so the first Duelist is going to be Raze. So Raze is really, really all you want in a Duelist. Mobile, has a lot of threat. So she can threaten a lot of different places. So she can satchel out with ult, and that threatens a very wide area of spaces, like a very wide area when she comes out. So you can't, if the enemy's there, they'll die. So they're wary of that. They should either give up the space or try and contest the space. And if they contest the space, the odds are they might die, even in response with a Raze rocket. She also has nade to also stop people from hiding in corners. She can also combo with one of the other strongest agents in the game. I'll get to later. Sure, you can guess who that is. She can also find enemy agents using the boombot, so she can clear space, take that space with ult or something, or nade. She's very, very strong at just getting into getting into places, which is what you wanted for Duelist. And also, it's very similar to Raze. Neon's also very good at getting into places. She's probably the strongest in the game at this. She's very good at abusing timings. Understanding when you have timings is like a very important part of Neon. Her stun is really, really strong for taking space. Her fast lane helps her get into sights easier. Her self-sufficient, she also is going to get buffed, so she's going to have, I think, 54 damage per tick on headshot. So that means that she kills you in like 2 seconds or something. If she lands all headshots, maybe less than that actually. I haven't been on PB, I haven't seen it or timed it, but I'm guessing it's pretty good. Honestly, her mobility is just insane, probably the best in the game. Her movement, everyone's playing Valorant while she's playing Apex. She can just run around and destroy your opponent with movement. You can get to places that just no other agent can get to in the same time. The only thing that she doesn't have is like the verticality that other agents do, like Raze and Jet. And Raze also does have the speed that Neon can, just limited to like both her satchels being used up in that round, so she can do it once per round, and Neon can do it throughout the round. And then we got Jet. So I think Jet is probably the lowest I've ever put her at B tier. I don't think the changes coming up are really going to affect her a massive amount. I mean, all it does is make worse Jets look worse. Basically all it does, because it means that the Jets that relied on getting leg shots will be less reliable now, I guess. That's basically it, really, with the changes for Jet. But I think overall, with her nerf to her dash, it wasn't really a full nerf, because she has the ability to reset during the time that she can dash. So she can have 2 dashes very quickly together. And I think that is, like, in certain situations a buff. But most of the time it's a very slight nerf, or it's a nerf where you need to understand when you can, when you're going to be taking fights or not. And sometimes you can just get it wrong. Even if you're good at knowing when you can take a fight, sometimes there's just going to be a time where you're going to waste your dash. I think that's where she's the weakest. And then we got Yoru. So I think Yoru is also one of the more playable he's ever been. I think I found it, if anything, he's probably the most playable he's ever been. I think he's got really standout maps like Bind and Breeze. I think he's playable in a couple of the maps. I think the new map are definitely not, but I could be wrong. I don't have the most Yoru experience, but I do have a decent amount. I think his flashes have always been decent. His fake out steps, his fake clone, is really, really good for selling fakes. It's really good for being on the other side of the map and then like using it to sell maybe more people being somewhere than there actually is. You can TP behind people, set with flashes, get free kills on people that are kind of isolated. You can also use your ult to disrupt at the back of the map, to disrupt the enemy. Maybe get into places that you shouldn't really get to. You can TP past Sentinel traps, etc. Like, there's plenty of things you can do on Yoru that make him very, very annoying to deal with. But I think overall right now he is just that. He's just annoying. He's not like immensely strong. If you're like really, really good at understanding what you can do with Yoru, like what openings you can find, then I think he can be a really, really solid duelist. But I think he can't really take the duelist slot away from Neon and Raze right now. I think it's definitely is some like contest with Jet though. We're gonna go on to Phoenix. So Phoenix isn't too bad, but I don't think he's that good either. He's definitely more playable now, especially in ranked, than he was. In pro, he's going to be taking the flex position if he's ever played, and he probably won't be played for that reason, because I think initiators are just a bit too. They've just got like a overloaded kit. Basically, initiators do, I think. And that means that Phoenix probably won't find his way there unless they manage to make him initiator. Phoenix just needs some ability to actually rival the other duelists. I think he just needs to maybe become his wall or something. So he gets like a little like a really slow dash maybe across his wall, and then he reappears at the end of his wall. That could be something interesting. Something like that. Or he gets a speed boost when going across, like down his wall. That could also be an option. Something that just gives him a bit more mobility, I think, would really benefit him. Or maybe I just thought of something different there, but I'm not gonna. Maybe if he goes through his wall, he gets temporary armor. So he gets like, so if he didn't have full shields, he would get like 25 shields, and it won't go over 150. So he's still killable at like 150, but like maybe he gets like 25 shield, or he gets like healed 25 instantly for passing through his wall once. That could also be something doable. If they want to go that kind of rate, that could also be something. Maybe not just 25, maybe 50, who knows. And then we got Reyna. So I think Reyna is kind of the same as Phoenix. He relies on you being consistent. So if you are a consistent player, you can find consistent success with Reyna. She's like a double-edged sword, where if you pop off, then you're going to pop off and probably win the game because you popped off. Contrary to maybe other agents that maybe don't quite have that pop-off sort of power, have that ability to go big in one round. In comparison to the rest of characters, because she can heal, she can dismiss, she can get herself out of fights. So she's very good at doing stuff like that. She has her own flashes too. She's very self-sufficient in that way. But I do think she falls short because she has no utility, basically. There's no other way to play Reyna other than play her like she's played. There's no way to think about Reyna in a different way. You can't really play her support because two of her abilities are just not designed for it. Blind is not bad, but you can't really do anything else with the rest of her kit. Her ult is designed around her two abilities that aren't designed around anything other than getting kills. So she just needs to get kills, basically. And in competitive, that's doable. In ranked, it's doable, but in competitive, no chance, I think, to have an agent that plays around just getting kills. Okay, we've got Sova going on to the initiators. So I think Sova is probably the lowest I've ever put him there. So this is A tier. So I think he's pretty good, but I think he falls short compared to Fade. I think he has a better. I think Recon is definitely better than Haunt, but I think the other three abilities are better than his other three abilities. So I think Drone is worse than Prowler. I think Shocks is just a lot worse than Seize. And I think that his ult is comparable, but not good compared to Nightfall. Testing a slot versus Fade. So I think it's quite unlucky, but I think the one thing he has over his range and his recon dart is just marginally better than Haunt. So I would say he's fighting for his position right now. But Fade Nerfs are probably going to come in soon. Now I want her to be played a bit longer, right? Maybe want to keep her in the meta a bit longer, but right now I think she will take Sova's spot as S tier, and I'll move on to her name. So she has all the things you want as an initiator. She can get you into places. She can deafen the opponent with her ult. She has Seize, so she can keep opponents in place. But much like Astra's suck, but it's much better than Astra, because they can't run out of it. They're forced to be tethered. So she can hold sights, which is something Sova really struggles at, and Fade doesn't. Fade can keep her position in a take, right? If people want to take the sight versus her, then she'll Seize, she'll use Prowlers to blind them. She has a lot more tools to stop her sight from being taken to anchor than Sova does. And that's one of the parts that's really keeping her above Sova. And I think her Haunt is very slightly worse than Recon Dart, because Recon Dart is much more versatile than Haunt is, for its range and its ability to get into places that Haunt just simply can't. But I think overall, like, Seize is way stronger than Shocks. Two Prowlers together are definitely way stronger than the current state of Drone. And her ult is just way better for taking sights than Sova's ult is. We'll say that Sova's ult is definitely better at holding onto like bomb diffusing. So if someone wants to defuse the bomb, he can threaten it with his ult from far away, similar to lineups, right? So I think he has overall better threat onto like defusing the bomb or planting the bomb or onto certain positions than Fade does. But Fade is very, very good at playing with her team, and that's honestly the main part why she's so strong. She also, the deafen is honestly really, really strong too, because it means that you don't even have to communicate what you're doing with your team. When your teammates see Nightfall in solo queue, they're like, I can now run, because they're all deaf, and I can just run at them, and they won't expect me on the timings, right? And I can swing them, and they won't hear me. And on top of that, your Nightfall gives you information as well. So if you get like a ping fast, if you get like a fast ping, you know they're close. If you get like a very, very delayed ping, then they're very far away, and you can relay that information to your team. And then we've got Breach. So Breach, I think, is the worst character in the game. Even though he is still played quite a bit in the competitive, and I think he has also played a lot in Fracture in solo queue. I think he's definitely the worst. He's Stuns aren't great because they just don't really stun properly. Honestly, first bullet accuracy is still basically the same, so the stuns feel fairly meaningless. His aftershock has too many prerequisites as a molly, so it needs to have a wall in front of the thing you're trying to molly essentially, which is very, very weird, and very, very like impossible on some maps. In some certain plant spots, maybe if you get some good different plant spots, then it can work, but I don't think it's worth risking like planting in very weird positions for a breach aftershock. And his flashes aren't bad, but they're not very self-sufficient. He can still flash for himself, but he's much better at flashing for his team, just the way his flashes work. They're also very turnable flashes as well. I think that he has like the most turnable flashes now that Phoenixes have definitely sped up. I think Yoru is also very close to having those turnable flashes, so I think Breach is definitely the most turnable, because it just makes such a loud sound and you can see it the whole way if it's in certain angles, and then the actual animation itself is very big and very, very slow, to be honest, compared to the rest of his animation, compared to the rest of the flash animations. So I think Sky is A tier with Sova. I think her dog is outperforming drone since the drone nerfs, and I think her flashes are really, really important compared to what Sova has. But I think Fade kind of overshadows her now, because Sky used to be what Fade was. What Fade is now like the best at, which is attacking a site as an initiator. That also gives you information. So Sky was good at giving you information through dog and through the noise cues from her flashes. She also does have like I would say a very small part of her where she can heal. Very good in solo queue if you want a bunch of assists. If you look at, I think it's Nosy who gets a bunch of assists on it might be Nosy, I can't remember who it is. They get a bunch of assists for just healing all his teammates at the start of the round, because they get hit by like a shot dart or something something else, just get randomly tagged. But other than that, like, she didn't really play into the healer. I'd say it's very good situationally, very good in like 2v1s when like your teammates should get taken a fight. Now you need to heal him really fast, and then you've got like 200 health people versus one. So you know, she's good in those sort of situations. Her ult is really good in like mid-range situations, especially his attack. If you get like a first pick, then you can now ult, and then you can see where 3 out of the 4 people are. Or mid-range when you're maybe 3v3, and then you can find where all of the 3 people are. Very similar to like a Cypher ult almost in that sense, but definitely on a much stronger character overall. So I think Sky is in a really strong spot. And then we've got KO. So I think KO is borderline S tier. I think he might actually be S tier. I think he's the best. He has the best flashes in the game. He's the only character that can silence, which is really, really big versus literally every agent in the game, because all of them are just CS players with their abilities. His ult is a free revive, so as long as you die in a reasonable spot with your ult, then you can be revived, so you have 2 lives in some situations. And then he has a molly on top of that, and now the molly does not need line of sight, so now it's like immensely broken with lineups and things. Now you can just throw the molly near the bomb and it works, and you don't have to try and find lineups for line of sight. So he's a lot more intuitive now as well. His flashes are just way too broken in the current state of the game too, with like he just can underarm any flash on a corner, and he's like basically guaranteed to get a flash as long as you like underarm it correctly from the correct distance. They can't turn it because it'll insta pop on the corner, so it's just impossible for them to ever. They didn't even know it was going to happen, so they can't turn it. It's impossible. So unless they actually go to play anti-flash. So I think KO is just the strongest agent, or one of the strongest agents in the game right now. The silence is just so broken because it means that they can't retaliate against you if you try and take a site, or if you want to go into a site. If the enemy wants to go into a site and you silence them, they have to delay their take by 8 seconds. And then if you ult, then you've delayed it for 8 seconds, and then they've wasted 8 seconds, and then you're gonna ult, and then they may think, well, we can't even go here, or we're gonna have to wait like another like 20 seconds before we can actually go in. So it's like, right, or they have to just take like raw jewels and hope for the best. Chamber is going to get heavy nerfed. I don't think he's going to be bad, but I don't think he's going to be great. So therefore I'm going to put him in A. This is mainly due to his rendezvous changes, because there's a lot of off angles that he won't be able to play now. And that means in solo queue, he's going to suffer quite a bit, I think. But I think in competitive, he's still going to be fairly strong. I think some parts of him, I think in competitive, he's going to still be able to buy every round. But I think in solo queue, there's going to be some people, at least at the start, that won't be able to understand that they need to not buy bullets in some rounds. Because there's lots of people that I see in solo queue who just buy 8 bullets every round. I think overall Chamber is going to be in a more balanced state. I don't think he's going to be as strong as he was, but I also don't think he's going to be weak. Actually, I'm going to put him on the very first part of A, because I think he's literally on the edge of A, on the edge of S, honestly. He's very, very close to S still, even despite the changes. But I think he's going to be slightly worse. Then we move on to Killjoy. So Killjoy is probably B or C. I think I'll go C. I think she struggles a lot because of her range on her util. So the idea of Killjoy is to set up a zone where the enemy can't go in unless they die. And then they'll die, right, if they go into this area that you've set up. And she's very good at doing that. But the problem is if she gets rotated, if she's being rotated away from, then she starts to struggle, which is a very good identity to have as a Sentinel, to be honest, because it means like then they can start working and buffing her like actual area where she's engaged, where you have to engage her, right? And I think with KO in the meta currently, she's really struggling too, because if she gets hit by the knife, then her stuff is off, and she has to play fairly close to her stuff as well, so she can't just swap sites like a Cypher could, with it, like Cypher and Astra meta. Where you play Cypher Astra versus KO and swap sites. Then if you get knifed, if the Cypher gets knifed, then the Astra is defending the Cypher. And then if the Astra gets knifed, then the Cypher is defending the Astra. Killjoy doesn't really have that. Raze is really annoying for her, can break setups easy, blast pack her stuff away. So there's just plenty of reasons not to play Killjoy. And her ult is very underwhelming in some of the maps as well. Her ult can be destroyed now as well, a lot of the time by lineups that people have. And then we got Cypher, who I think is very similar to Killjoy. I think the Rover of Pearl actually helped Cypher, because I think it's actually a good map for Cypher. But I think overall he still suffers with too many problems. His Cypher cages are very easy to deal with, because you can get haunted above them. Like the open top is really a problem. And then you've got like the camera is a bit too weak. It's very easily shot and long cooldown when it's shot. I think overall he needs to have like shorter cooldown on his cam, even though it is consistent with the rest of the Sentinels. At least now in 5.03 it will be, with Chambers nerf. It maybe even needs 3 trips, maybe. Maybe that would make sense, but at the same time that's very anti-fun in a way as well, to play against him in that sense too. So they'll have to find a way to make him stronger without making him boring to play against. I think his ult is pretty good, but it's because it's got a prerequisite on it. I think it actually is a bit harsh on 6. I think it should be 5. That could be maybe a bit too. I think if they want to buff him drastically, that would be a decent way to try, but that might be too much. Because his ult is definitely his strongest point. Sage, last but not least, I think she is really good right now. I'm not sure if I put it A or B. I think she's A. Oh, sorry, I think she's B, like very, very close to A. So I think she's good. She's really good at like delivering the bomb on like Icebox. She puts up the wall, plants, and then she probably dies. But I think overall, like her slows are good at delaying the opponent. They give slight information. I wouldn't call her a Sentinel because of that. But I think she's very good at defending. She's very good at like taking space very temporarily with her wall. And she's good at mixing up her angles. If you ever see Grim play, he just mixes up angles a lot with his wall. And the resurrection, it can't be understated. It is good, but overall it is situational. Much like Cypher's ult, it's just opposite, right? But there's a lot more prerequisites to it, right? So Cypher needs to kill someone in a decent spot next to him, basically. But Sage needs a teammate to die in a place where they can get rezzed. So in competitive, that's doable. In ranked, it's a lot harder. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on her ult being good. I think it's the actual effect itself is good at its high, but I think it's at its like consistent level, I don't think it's very strong. And I think the removal of Split also hurt her, because that was one of her best maps. And I think that's also the same with Cypher. I think Cypher removal of Split also hurt Cypher, and to an extent Killjoy. So we'll see triple changes to split soon, and maybe Killjoy and Cypher and Sage will rise up a bit more. But other than that, don't think we'll see them that much. That's gonna be the end of the tier list. This is the final tier list. Let me just move my mouse away. This is the final tier list. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a like. If you want to see more content, probably not like this exactly. I'll probably won't be doing many more tier lists, if any more. It's just something simple and quick today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.